Welcome to Speaker Meeting 2017, the gaming part. Would you like to hear about my experiences going through with video game addiction, or maybe it's just excessive gameplay on video games? Whatever you want to call it, I will launch into that right now. Video games is the addiction I would say I've spent the most of my time in. More time than alcohol, more time than anything else, because I've played 20,000+ hours of video games in my life already. That is a lot of time I've spent playing video games, and the main thing I wanted to do when I got drunk was play video games. The main thing that caused problems in my relationships consistently was video games, and even gambling was some kind of a function of all the video games I played, and the idea that I played games on my computer led gambling into just seeming like another game I could play on my computer. Even a lot of my unconscious eating was related to gaming, and I consistently used video games to change or avoid my feelings. I started my business in 2011, was called Gaming Addiction LLC. My first website for my business was gamingaddiction.net. So video game addiction is one of the things I could see in my life most clearly and most honestly, probably because I'd been involved in it so long. Since going back to middle school, I loved playing video games and would play video games at every chance I got. And once I got into high school and my life started to, in my opinion, get into a place of more negative emotions and frustration, I turned to video games to avoid my feelings, to help me get high, so to speak, that high of beating a tough level. I remember having so much fun playing Turok on Nintendo 64, and that high of beating the game or figuring out that puzzle, getting through the level. It was so good. And the first-person shooters, Duke Nukem and Quake, and playing all those 2D games, rolling through like Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back. I remember just dumping hours and hours into those and having so much fun. Then in high school, senior year, finally got a gaming addiction that affected my school. Up until 12th grade, senior year of high school, I'd gotten all A's my entire time in school. The first thing that disrupted that was a game called World War II Online. It was a game 10 or 20 years ahead of its time, a massively multiplayer online first-person shooter where you could actually grab infantry, tanks, planes, and fight on a full-scale battle of Europe World War II. An absolutely amazing experience. Maybe it was like a half or a quarter size, but they went and modeled nearly all of France, Germany, some of Britain, an incredible effort for a video game. And that was the first game I got completely hooked in. Up until that point, I'd played card games with my brother. I'd played Nintendo 64. And the year before that, junior year, I had had more of a normal high school life. I went out with girls. I played and had some fun playing sports with kids around the blocks. I would play some video games, but it wasn't all of what I did. When World War II Online came out this summer of senior year, before senior year started, I had my first complete video game addiction experience. All I wanted to do was play World War II Online. And for the first time, I didn't care about anything else. And maybe it was because I was going to college. I figured my grades didn't matter. I don't know what it was. I chose, instead of being valedictorian, I figured I wanted to be the best World War II Online player in the world. And man, I was good at that game. I played it a ridiculous amount. I would try, and every waking hour I could get my hands on the computer. When I wasn't at school, I was trying to play World War II Online. Things like waking up in the morning, having breakfast, and playing the entire day until I went to bed on a weekend. started to become a normal routine for me. I often would try and do my homework during the game, but often it just didn't get done. So I do my homework while I was in school. I skipped my reading and my grades suffered senior year, but I still managed to graduate and go to college. I also started reading a bunch of war books while I was playing the game because the game was so realistic. If you were in infantry, you had to literally ride on a truck or a tank or fly in a plane and parachute out to get to the battlefield. So often you had to spend 30 plus minutes just getting into the fight, and you needed infantry to capture a town. So there'd often be all these tanks all over. You'd spend 30 minutes just to get shot on your truck. You'd have to spawn in again, get on another truck. You drive 30 more minutes. That truck would flip over. You'd be running in. You'd get shot by a tank before you even got into town. You'd get on another truck over and over again. And finally, when you went in and actually got to do some infantry combat and you captured a town, it was just this amazing high. Because it was as close as I'd gotten a video game to feeling like I actually cared about my life. That I didn't want the soldier I was playing to just get slaughtered. Like I had a real life and that fear. Running around all these tanks firing, infantry firing, and that fear. Knowing that it's going to take you 30 minutes to get back in the fight as an infantry. And knowing that your side needed those infantry to capture the town. It was so intense. And then you'd get in the middle of the town and get behind the lines, and the enemy infantry wouldn't be looking for you. The screen weight was just choppy. I'd be sitting there plugging. I killed like 16 guys, 1 life, just in the middle of a hot fight in town, and I just thought that was the best thing ever. And I learned how to play the tanks and infantry vehicles and the anti-tank guns. I could do about everything well except fly. And I had 1 life. I killed 100 enemies in 1 life. The same guys probably lots of times. But I killed 100 enemies with a tank. I brought a tank to the front, emptied all of my ammo, went back, reloaded it, and came back to the front and killed, and we took the town. And that game became the only thing I wanted to do. In fact, I went out with a girl, just a beautiful girl senior year, who had given me an amazing look at work, was the first girl who really looked me deep in the eye. And what did I want to do? I wanted to go home and play World War II online. So I literally ended the date way early. She was really mad. And I went home and found out I'd got banned from the clan I was in, which I was just devastated about. Apparently, a bunch of guys 30, 40, 50 years old playing the game didn't find a 17-year-old kid who thought he was the very best at the game and was pretty close to it, who they didn't like all of my antics in the clan. So I got home to realize that I had just canceled a date with an amazing girl to play a video game that now I'd got banned from my clan. And this is the typical thing that continued to happen over and over and over with video games in my life for the next 10 years until I moved in with my wife. One video gaming problem to another. Now, I thought going to college and I thought just playing video games, I didn't think that was a big deal because I'm not hurting anyone. And at the time, I hadn't drank yet. So I hadn't built up all this shame about my life. I had the seeds, I had the foundations of all the things I've talked about before. I had the seeds ready to bring into harvest, but I didn't see gaming as a problem. I saw it as something purely fun, and I saw it as something that would be automatically managed by the rest of my life. For example, with work, college, school, I would just make the amount of games I played reasonable. I wouldn't play more games than my life can handle.